So hello all, welcome back to the 2022-2023 guest lecture series. I hope you guys are all well, that you all had a pleasant and restful break, and that you're settled back into the new term. So we're going to pick up from where we left off. The Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering are excited to host the 11th talk in the annual guest lecture series. So this series runs weekly throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings, bringing together a vibrant mix of speakers from across the full spectrum of design and engineering. A mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to inspire and support your professional development. Tonight, we're delighted to host Wyn Griffiths from Middlesex University Product Design Engineering, and SMASHfestUK. To most of the participants, all of the BA Product Design, BEng Product Design Engineering students, obviously Wyn's a familiar face. He's a core academic staff on all your programs. And for all of the other participants who might not have met Wyn prior to today, Wyn's detailed biography, learning and teaching interest, research, practice outputs, and projects was linked and shared in the email ahead of the talk as well. So a short introduction to who Wyn is. So Wyn's a senior lecturer in design engineering and mathematics. He teaches primarily on our BA Product Design and BEng Product Design Engineering programs. He also leads and partners on large collaborative social innovation research projects as well. In these projects, Wyn engages and he empowers students as co-creators and co-investigators. He has like 25 plus years of experience in product design and engineering and design education as well. Currently, Wyn's the project lead on the British Science Association and the Royal Academy of Engineering with the funded Climate Crisis Wildfire Programme. Wyn's also the design lead on the Heritage Lottery Green Recovery Challenge Fund, the Wonder Leader for the STFC, where he focuses on co-design public engagement with underserved communities, and a board member for the Explore Your Universe program as well with the National Association of Science Discovery Centres. Wyn has a lot of experience in event, installation, experience, and exhibition design. Prior work includes like conceiving, founding, and running SMASHfestUK, which we'll hear more about later, with the refinery, alongside creating large-scale mechanical installations such as the Globe of Dislocation, the remnants of which is which was originally exhibited in the Royal Observatory, and the remnants of which can be seen on the other side of the design studio as well. Wyn's also worked on the stained glass car of the future, which was a physical thought experiment with the designer Dominic Wilcox for BMW Mini and Design. And he's also designed and run several exhibitions, including Robot Overlords, which was an immersive robotics experience, which was exploring the perception and reality of robotics technology and social penetration in the London Design Festival in 2015. Wyn's going to discuss some of these as well as appropriate to the core topic of co-design in the talk today. For all of our participants, as usual, feel free to gather your thoughts, your comments, your questions in the chat throughout the talk. We'll have Q&A at the end as well. So there's the option to go live and interact with Wyn after the main talk. And without any further delay, over to Wyn with the talk titled, What is Co-Design and How Can It Help? Case Studies from MDXPD.
Thank you, Ahmed. That's very strange, sitting and listening to somebody kind of reading up stuff about yourself and then having a talk about yourself. It's that background, I think, is important. We're going to talk about co-design today. We'll start to unpick co-design, but it's a huge subject to fit into a short lecture. So the whole talk is intended for you to find a way in to co-design, the issues around co-design, a bit of an overview of how it works in the world, how people perceive it, some examples of work that we have done here in MDXPD and associated groups, and then some things to think about in your own practice. And I can't help myself being a bit of an academic, then there's lots of further reading. So there's lots of links of things that you can go on and read more about, and that runs through the talk as well. There's all that stuff. There's all that stuff that's my formal profile, but through my life, I've not come through a traditional academic route. I came to academia in my 30s. I've done lots of stuff, lots of levels, in lots of places, in lots of communities. And that's some of the things I've been called in terms of my job titles over the years. And that's led to an interest in how design and engineering works out in this complex world, how we fit into the world, how we contribute to the world, and how our activities make huge social impacts, and about the intended and unintended consequences of our work and our practices. We're specifically talking about co-design. Co-design is a particular framing of an approach that's also known as co-creation, depending on how you look at the methodologies, co-production, participatory design, participatory creativity, etc., etc. We're going to stick with the term co-design, although we will unpick the terminology behind that and the historical background to that as well a little bit. Those who've encountered co-design before will often, the perception of co-design often revolves around, it's a thing you do with lots of post-its. This is not true, although there is an element of truth in it. Post-its can be quite important in the practice, but it's not all about post-its. So what is it about? Well, before we go into the co-design exploration itself, I want to think about design and engineering and what we mean by design and engineering. We all do it, but the definitions of what these things are and what we expect from them and the responsibilities within them are evolving, changing, and variable depending on who you talk to. So we, as a practice, as a university, as a course in product design and engineering, think about it in the ways that I've got up here. So design being the conscious and intuitive effort to impose meaningful order. But there's a meta level to that as well, which I think is probably the best way to think about both design and engineering. It's decision-making with intent. Seems very, very meta, but we'll kind of build that discussion as we go. And then engineering is often defined as, and we accept the definition as, the creative application of scientific principles to design, develop structures, machines, apparatus, or manufacturing processes. Interesting, within the definition of design, of engineering, design is part of the definition. And in our image of ourselves at MDXPD, and MDXPD is the phrase that we help create the world we see around us by bringing people and technology together in meaningful ways to create useful stuff and things. So that phrase, design, the definition being decision-making with intent, opens up lots of things to think about in terms of our roles and co-design. Co-design, if design is decision-making with intent, co-design must involve collaborative decision-making. And worth pausing a little bit to think about how we do this. You often hear about design and engineering processes, when, yes, in some sense, what we do goes through a process, because it's a series of actions or steps. We do have series of actions of steps, we have deadlines, etc. But within that, the way we do it tends to be conversational. The idea of this dynamic of between two or more people, groups of ideas, talking to one another, responding to one another, evolving together. And then we do it within the frame of a practice, doing things rather than just thinking of things. So those are all definitions that kind of sit within how we think about design and engineering, and therefore how we think about co-design. So that idea that design and engineering are decision-making with intent, and we bring people and technology together in meaningful ways is important. But within the processes we tend to encounter in industry, in education, in society, that creative development and decision-making tends to happen about people. And we still, have very, very common usage of the old terminology of users. And what, the idea that we design at people, we engineer at people rather than with people in this complex, often dysfunctional world that we've created, this designed and engineered world, raises really big alarm bells. This is a little excerpt from our program blurb. Creating new things that have a positive impact that make the world a better place. Well, the big question you've got to keep asking, if you're involved in innovation, if you're involved in design and engineering, better for whom? And how do we ensure that the people we are designing for, supposedly, have their voices heard? How do we make sure that everybody has agency within this creative process, which we define as a decision-making process? Who makes the decisions? And how do we work on drawing people together so that we get past this idea of a user and get to the idea of co-creators and co-decision makers? This raises another theoretical point, which is often avoided in design and engineering, and that's about politics. You'll note I've put politics with a small p there. We're not talking about politics, political parties. We're not talking about, do you vote for this group or that group? Do you align yourself with this group or that group as such? We're talking about the general sense that politics runs through everything we do. It's about who gets what, when, and how. It's about resource management, but it's also about identity and culture management. Bit of extra reading there if you want. My first of many here if you want to read some more. So we are designing things, we're engineering things that intrinsically has resource management embedded within it. But also we embed the things that we create with identity and culture and assign these things. So therefore, we can't but get past the idea, which is often avoided, that all design and engineering is political. So something for you to stop and pause and think about. The choices we're making, the world that we're creating, the decisions we take within this practice of design and engineering are inherently, by their nature, political. So if this is a space of creation of the world around us that is political, we need to think about power dynamics. Who has the power in this? Who decides what gets designed, what gets engineered, what gets created, in what way, for whom, why? There's a really interesting reflection upon power dynamics in innovation and design and engineering by Pierce Gordon here, the idea of how innovators wield power and about how we think of that control of power in a way that aligns more with our general democratic thinking. So that's the kind of framing of the background for us to think about our own practice, our own areas of design engineering, product design engineering, and how we sit in the world, and some of the often avoided responsibilities that we have in this world. So that's me talking for a while. Let's let somebody else talk for a little bit. Let's get to the subject directly. That's the kind of some background thinking. Let's get to the subject directly about co-design. This is a group that are funded by the EU to explore and communicate co-design. So they've come up with a lovely little vid about what is co-design, which is kind of cute. So I'm going to hand over to them.
You're a creative professional and you want to learn more about co-design? Perfect. Let's start. Co-design is a design approach aimed at actively involving end users, customers, and other relevant stakeholders in the design process to ensure the outcome meets their needs. We're talking about co-creation applied to design with a focus on active collaboration between users and designers. A core concept of co-design is that users are experts of their own experience. Research and design are not done on behalf of the user, but with the user. A co-design process or workshop is usually based on 4 steps: engage, understand, ideate, and validate. In the first step, we learn from each other and set the challenge. In the second step, we focus on user needs to gather key insights for each stakeholder. In the third step, we co-create design concepts and build prototypes. And finally, we check the validity and the co-created solution by testing and evaluating the resulting prototype with end users and other stakeholders.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I don't make that go away. So the same group also, that gives us a nice breakdown. What is co-design from one group's perspective? It's a nice distillation. We're going to unpack, after we've watched these two short videos, what's contained within there and look at the background and rebuild through. But they're summarizing quite a bit of what I'd started to introduce there, about the idea of changing the relationship between the participants in a design, innovation, engineering process, starting to break down those boundaries between users and customers and designers and engineers, thinking about it's not a word that I particularly like, the stakeholder thing. It sounds like business and marketing, but it gives you this neutral thing. Everybody who has a stake in the decision making that's going on, the things that are going to be produced and the impacts on the world. So bringing everybody into this equal relationship as stakeholders. And then it's talking a little bit about some general stages. You'll get this in a lot of different frames, everything from IDOs, framing, through the double diamond from the Design Council of engage, understand, ideate, validate. So get people involved, first of all. That's the big thing in co-design, making sure that people are fully involved, making sure they're comfortable, making sure they feel valued, making sure they have agency, they feel they can contribute, making sure that these power dynamics, this imbalance between the ones who generally hold the power, the ones making the decisions, and the ones who are generally defined as customers or users, the end point. Changing that. And then the understanding the thing itself, the problem itself, ideating with that, coming up with ideas, testing, validating, prototyping, checking it, making it better. Standard process, practice, conversational elements that we do in product design engineering, design engineering. That's the general intro to that. So, we come back to the why. Well, hopefully you're starting to get lots of hints of why we could do this from what's already been said, but here's a little summary from their perspective.
Ever wonder if co-design is just another buzzword, or why to co-design? To approach a challenge from a co-design mindset helps to ensure a great process and outcomes that make sense to people. Based on the study of best practices, 5 main benefits can be highlighted. First of all, co-design enables everyone involved to be an active agent of change. The design of future solutions is not limited to specific groups of people, but everyone, including users, clients, or employees, can take part in it. So their needs and experiences become more relevant. Second, co-design helps to better connect all relevant parties, and it boosts collaboration across disciplines. Third, a co-design process fosters the motivation of everyone involved. It also increases openness to innovation and change. Fourth, co-design leads to more inclusive and credible solutions. And finally, co-design has a strong focus on realization and implementation, enabling more targeted and differentiated products, services, or systems.
Okay, so the why gives us lots of reasons. Some, from my perspective, and from the work that we do, more important than others. We'll go into the discussion of, it finishes up on the better customers, better products, more commercial. It starts to fall into that area that it's about sales in the end. And that is one route that co-design has taken, and it's the dominant route in industry, whatever industry is. But I think, we've got to be careful that misses the really huge power of what co-design can do. And that's summed up by the little phrase in there of making everyone an active agent of change. So allowing people the agency, supporting people to have the agency and the ownership of innovation so that we can change for the better for a wider range of people, for a wider range of reasons, not just so a company can sell some more stuff. It all always comes back to the people. Co-design is about people, people's participation, people's equal active agency within creative processes of all of the stuff that we create, not just about post-it notes. Where did it all come from then? You know, where have we arrived at co-design? A little back pedal just to set that frame, because one strand is really important to my thinking and the perspective I'm giving on that co-design should be about more than just selling more products and targeting better differentiated products to people. We're talking about design and engineering in this industrial and post-industrial world where we've got separation of production, creation, the intellectual development, the use of things. Prehistorically, pre-industrially, things weren't separated in that way. We also had the storytelling. We've always had the storytelling. We're storytelling creatures. Humankind is a storytelling group, and we like to focus on the idea of the lone genius, the inventor of this, or the person who came up with that theorem, all on their own magically. And you know, this isn't true. It's never been true. It's all cooperative activity. We build upon one another's work. We build upon knowledge beforehand. We usually, almost always, collaborate. If somebody individually publishes it, or they do a Thomas Edison where they snap up everybody else's work and claim it was theirs, we reinforce this falsehood about lone genius. And then we've got the idea of democracy, a concept that gets implemented and becomes a fundamental for many of our societies that we know about in terms of shared decision making about our whole society. Back to that decision making with intent, designing society through our choices. Jump then from those general things into design and engineering movements that preempt where we are now with our ideas about co-design. Bauhaus, we always got to mention the Bauhaus, but their approach kind of preceded this sort of thinking in terms of formally bringing the idea of collaborative approaches and interdisciplinary approaches and how collective thinking could make things create this perfect world. Obviously, utopias and perfection can't exist, don't exist. And even if they did exist in one form, one person's utopia is another person's dystopia. So that type of thinking only goes so far. Back in 1959, John Arnold was thinking about how this translates into creative engineering. And this was the idea of cooperative and collaborative inquiry rather than linear sequential thinking. Back in 1959, actually through the 1960s up to 1971 and onwards, Scandinavian thinking around design was particularly prominent in terms of this idea of participation and what it can do in terms of design decision making as well. There's a lovely paper, a review of Scandinavian approaches to participatory design you can find here and read about. But the Scandinavian approach was about rebuilding society post-Second World War and trying to make sure that the decision making and the creative design that went in would always be about improving the quality of working life for everybody involved and would support the democratization of society. It wasn't about selling more stuff or making better stuff in that saleable way. It was about the fundamental worth of everyone's life and design and engineering serving that rather than the other way around. That then stimulated, there's a nice little breakdown here by Stephanie Goya, that you can look at a brief history of co-creation, terminology, as I said. The Scandinavian approach, cooperative design leading to participatory design, then gets taken up by American society and American design and engineering. And they start to develop their thinking in a way that encompasses user-centered design, human-centered design, formally claiming design thinking, and co-opting co-design in a way that became more commoditized. It became a way to package your practice, extend your practice, and sell more stuff. The Scandinavian tradition about participation and fairer society and better society in that sense continued. I cut this out, but there's an interesting stat which is not entirely solely related to this mindset in terms of design, but it's part of the complex that shows the happiness index, the global happiness index, and the Scandinavian countries, all of them are always in the top 10, usually in the top 5. So there's something about how we the choices we make, how we think of design and engineering, who it's for, what it's for, how it's done, is really important in terms of our societies. Okay. That's a bit of background. That's a bit of theoretical thought. There's some things to ponder for you. Here are some examples of what we've been doing over the years at Middlesex University in collaboration with people and groups who work within the department. So actually, the first bit isn't about Middlesex University, but it's just a thing for you to think about that kind of reinforces the point I'm making about the direction that co-design and co-creation has taken in industry, big industry, and corporations in many ways. Then we'll have a little spin through some of the projects that we've worked on, finishing off on one of our individual students' final major project in 2021. So you can go and have a look at this, this little online piece, this online blog about customer co-creation, 12 companies who are doing it right. The question mark I've added. And because we ended, excuse me, we then follow into discover how 12 big players are leveraging the power of co-creation to market new products and create growth, sell more stuff. So there's a lot of work. We've got companies with big leverage. I've just picked Devolt out here, Power Tools. And they've got an insights panel. And this insight panel is all about customers contributing to product development ideas. Hey, free thinking, free creativity from our customers so that we can better differentiate our products and sell them more things. It just lacks a little ambition from my perspective, and it follows a very narrow way of thinking and applying this very powerful type of approach to a very limited outcome, and essentially a very corrosive outcome for the way that our global situation is continuing to degrade. What we have done, some examples. This starts back from 2012. I think we first did this. We started to think about how do we connect our students with global collaborative groups. And at that point, there was a new platform emerging called OpenIDEO that was intended, a new tool for collaborative and social impact design, but connecting the whole world with big challenges about how we could approach these wicked problems that are often called, these complex things that aren't just a single, easily solvable physical problem, but they're about systems, they're about services, about where we live, but about the things within them. So we started to do work, cancelling all of the timetable, bringing all 3 years of students together to work on these big problems. And we picked up on the first of all, the wellness challenge, about how we design to make healthier living for everyone in terms of mental and physical health. And we particularly were interested in the learning environment. And students really dove into this, created really great things. These are the pages from a book that was published by OpenIDEO talking about their work. So they were published, their work was published, lots of really interesting outcomes. that led on to us developing and targeting the next co-design program. So that was working with all these different people all over the globe. In this case, we started to work with the government school of the government digital service, who came in, and all the students working together again, all 3-year groups, to work with outside experts, inside experts, with the staff, with themselves, to start to design their own curriculum. And they worked through and created this idea of, and the government digital service blogged about this, the civil service, about the government school of design, and about how their creative input had kind of structured the thinking about what students needed in the modern world of higher education, design and engineering education in particular, and how that aligned with industrial needs. So, and bringing in those specific perspectives. And we put this together, what was created here, fed into our curriculum design for our validation of the programs, and informed the programs that some of you are studying on now. So the programs some of you are studying on were co-designed by the students who studied on them previously. Changing direction. So that's some of the student co-design we've done. We worked on a big co-design collaborative program, students, staff at Middlesex University, and then collaborating with artisans in informal settlements around Nairobi and in villages in South Sudan, working with Kenyatta University, Terra Nova NGO, the British Council. And this was this told an interesting story of how true co-design evolves beyond what you expect the unexpected, as it were, because this was an engineering optimization project that we began with, and that, you know, that was something we continued to work with. A couple of examples here. It was about turning waste combustible material into briquettes. The majority of people living in the informal settlements kept warm, cooked via burning charcoal. Charcoal is very destructive in terms of the environment, because deforestation was happening everywhere around these areas, but also destructive socially, because large gangs essentially were running the charcoal production and keeping those who sold the charcoal in the area and bought the charcoal. That was part of the complex that was keeping people in poverty. So it was about, how do we turn the means of production for our own energy sources around and allow us to create them, and allow us to therefore build our own sustainable communities and sustainable businesses. So these are a couple of the mechanical solutions that came out.
Yeah. Now, context of materials, we have a manual one, what you can see here, and then you have a motorized one. The manual one, and these are the SAGs, 90 kg SAGs on a daily basis.
So that one, Ruth was the design lead there. She's a remarkable woman, entrepreneur, engineer, social activist, who led the design with support from us in terms of CAD optimization and development for an extrusion machine, essentially, that could create, you can make briquettes by hand, or you can create machines that will compress and extend and extrude, or do this, that allow you to up the output and the quality of the briquettes and to turn a business. So the other one was using charcoal dust and partially combusted materials. This is using paper, waste paper, compressed down. And that was great. Both of those were great. But as we went through the project, the optimization of those machines was really positive. Everybody was appreciating that, but more and more, it became evident, and the people we were working with were explicit in saying, unfortunately, we need a system around this. We need to design a way to connect all of the producers and to build a business model and to build a support network. So we went from engineering optimization into creating a big co-design festival. We called it an unconference that brought in a lot of our artisans, a lot of people from the communities, but also funders and researchers and government people. And we got together to create something new.
We've tried to gather together as many people working in briquetting or with an interest in briquetting or wanting to know more about briquetting to get together, to share the stories, speak to one another, and then come up with ideas to increase the capacity, to increase the output of briquetting. One important part of what we're going to do is to come out here and everybody get to see machines and people working with and speak to one another. We want to build up a network. Hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have shared experiences, come up with some great ideas, and come up with a plan for future activity. It'll be of a benefit to everybody. Lots of people doing lots of interesting things, innovative things, but in some cases isolated, unconnected, not aware of all of the rest of the activity that's going on around briquetting. Get everybody together and then to share the expertise. This event is all about storytelling, but it's also about co-design. It's about coming together to make benefits for everybody. It's not just talking shop. We want this to be a place where we do things, a true tangible thing. We started as a very technical project. It was about machinery. It was about making machinery better as a collaborative group. As we went through the project, we realized there was more to the situation than that, than just technical optimization.
Apologies, folks, I realize time is ticking on.
What it is in our view is a creative festival. We're here to do stuff. We're here to come up with great ideas. We're here for everybody to contribute.
And that's what happened. Through that, through the whole project and through that festival, through that co-design day, the collaborative group came up with this service design, this future system, future network, a proposal for collaborative activism, a proposal for ongoing collaborative support for business, etc., etc. You can go and have a look at all of the videos. We've got loads and loads of videos from those days that take you through what actually happened, how it happened, and it led to some really interesting things. That movement, the political side of it, and I'm coming back to the political side of it, of trying to get change and support change in informal settlements that are technically illegal and are, have often been sidelined, oppressed, and just trampled on, led to the network, the groups within this this co-design collective getting together to make sure that they were activist about the changes needed. And there was a lovely moment. There was the Volunteers World parade that was, parading to show off the voluntary activity that was going on across Nairobi and to push for change in terms of the policies in society. and the Fuel from Waste groups that had formed there led this whole parade across Nairobi. Different outcomes, different spaces, but powerful collective creative action happening. I'm going to hand over to Ahmed now for a short while, and he's going to be talking about some of the work he's been doing using the same approaches.
Amazing. So guys, once we've understood in terms of what co-design is, and however, we choose to define it. So for example, if you've taken the definition similar to what we've seen in the co-create.training link, where co-design is a design-led participatory approach to designing solutions. So a process which uses both like the creative and participatory methods, where you actively involve stakeholders in the design and development process. Then through this particular definition, I'll kind of explain some of the work that I've been working on over the course of the last few years. So this particular postgraduate project, it features the design of an information visualization, which provides doctors, general practitioners, GPs, with an effective overview of the patient health state. So, so the GPs can get a quick overview and the essence of the patient in real time. And the benefits of this is the EHR, the electronic health record at present, is really poorly organized. Information is relatively archaic, tabulated format, whereas obviously there's a lot of potentials and possibilities in terms of information communication to GPs as well. So what we did here in terms of the design of the novel visualization is we integrated both a theoretical principle, so like a top-down approach, with like co-design or participatory design, a bottom-up approach. And the design was developed iteratively whilst applying both this bottom-up and top-down approach, which included understanding electronic health record users and other stakeholders' needs and wants. We did this through interviews, focus groups, and workshops. So at the start of the project, again, working with users and understanding their needs, we began by capturing insights from interviews with doctors and a series of questionnaires across the UK, again, with GPs working in the various NHS regions, to try and get an understanding in terms of their information needs before the clinical consultation, alongside trying to highlight the hierarchy between the key information. So where you have longitudinal data that spans years and years, for example, if you're a patient who's in the 70s, 80s, you have potentially 80 years worth of medical information, how do you establish the hierarchy between the key information? What do you need? What's relevant? What's really important for that doctor to know? So through these initial kind of explorations in terms of interviews and questionnaires, we tried to ascertain the what, the when, the why, and the whom for. So once this was known, and there was several studies and write-ups for this as well, so there's papers which I can link you guys to following this particular talk as well. Then what we did is we started with the design of this visualization. This went through like an iterative process, like many of you guys would do in the design and engineering programs. And this included the co-design and participation from the core users and other stakeholders. So obviously the core users for the scope of this particular project was GPs, but other stakeholders is also like it's really important to also understand other stakeholders' needs and influences within that particular project as well. For example, policy makers, designers, those who would implement and do the development, alongside obviously patients as well, as their information is being communicated to the GPs. So what we did is we attained feedback and insights in this process of iterative design, and we use this to refine and develop the information visualization, alongside obviously applying concepts and techniques of visual perception, including things like information processing, sensory and spatial organization, and so forth as well. If Wyn goes to the next slide, one of the other things that we did is we conducted a design workshop with 20 plus MA, MSc Innovation Design Engineering students as well. So there's an IDE course which runs across Imperial College London and the Royal College of Art program. So what we did is we ran a series of workshops here. It was a remote design workshop. Obviously, it just happened at the cusp of COVID, so conducted via Zoom and Miro. And it was conducted as a kind of collaborative idea generation activity. So the aim of this particular workshop was to kind of brainstorm and understand what top-level metaphors designers propose when they visually communicate and represent well-being. In this particular case, their own overall kind of health and well-being, alongside trying to understand like how they visually represent it, which metaphors, mechanisms, iconography they use and employ in terms of integrating information elements, in terms of isolated information elements as well. So towards getting a quick overview and using pre-attentive features as well here. So this particular slide obviously just shows a snapshot during that particular 3-hour session with the IDE course. And these initial kind of thoughts and propositions and metaphors was developed, and we then presented these top-level conceptual metaphors. And it's, again, interestingly, as a designer, there's many processes that you might go through which other users and stakeholders don't understand. So being able to kind of conceptualize or categorize something at a top level, for example, if you're proposing something that's new or innovative, being able to kind of conceptualize it with something that, you know, the other stakeholders or users may understand. So for example, if you're presenting an idea to GPs and at a top level, you tell them it's like a word cloud, or it's like a hub and spoke model, or it's like a swimming lane model, for example. Again, these kind of top level metaphors or categorizations will help them to kind of understand what you're trying to achieve, and then obviously contribute towards that as well. So we presented these designs to GPs and designers in focus groups. They had around 6-7 participants per group. And we had a couple of cycles of these at different stages, key stages of the design process, to attain these different perspectives from both the clinical kind of aspect alongside the design aspect. So we wanted to understand the user needs, the preferences, what worked well, elements that could be added, improved, refined, to aid with the kind of information assimilation before the consultation. Feedback from the designers provided obviously the guidance and suggestions in terms of like what visual representations to take forward and how to communicate that information effectively and other modes of information communication. And obviously the feedback from the GPs was centered around the usability, around their what they comprehend, and kind of streamlining the efficiency there as well, in terms of reducing the amount of time it takes them to attain and assimilate that key information that was predefined via those interviews and questionnaires. Alongside this, we also conducted focus groups with patients as well. So patients with multiple varying conditions. And this was quite important as well. Again, it was outside of the scope of the project, but, you know, looking at what's existing currently, what's happening, trends, and, you know, for example, where patients should have an ownership of their own health and so forth, right? Understanding, like, if you're kind of presenting this information to GPs, how they can share that information with patients in the future. And again, trying to understand what information is most important to patients, what information they would like doctors to know about them, what they consider important to display before the consultation, during the consultation, after the consultation, feedback that they would like to take away as well. And again, thoughts that could then feed into the actual design process or be kind of banked for future development as well. In terms of obviously the cycles and how many users that we had, what we did is to kind of guide and target these focus groups. We had focus groups that were grouped according to the specific stakeholders. So for example, there was focus groups for general practitioners, focus groups for designers, focus groups for patients. And again, this helped to kind of, allow the GPs to kind of, contribute, and the designers to contribute, and the patients to kind of contribute within their own realm of expertise and build on each other's kind of comments and feedback without having to kind of explain or kind of dumb down or even kind of simplify certain concepts which they could then obviously build on, and which we could then kind of take and gather insights and analyze as well. And in terms of the participants and numbers, if you go to the next slide, Wyn, we had around, in total, around 28 designers, 9 primary care GPs, and trust me, during COVID, to get 9 primary care GPs from across the UK, from different health, NHS regions as well, was quite a challenging task. And we had 6 patients, and all of these were recruited from like existing networks and so forth. And again, sometimes when you're seeking expertise from other disciplines, which you might not be, immersed in yourselves. So for example, if you're a GP, it's very easy to kind of tap into your own network and your own resources. Again, it's thinking of ways that you can be kind of thrifty about stuff. So for example, if you're at a university that has a medical school, how can you then connect with the medical school and then open up and kind of enhance your networking possibilities there? And kind of trawling the internet and websites for links to different general practitioner practices, different kind of forums, which are GP specific. And again, kind of capitalizing on these to kind of enhance and kind of meet your recruitment needs as well. I'll just leave you guys with a couple of quotes. So it's really hard to actually design products, services, artifacts by focus groups. One of the key things, right, is that a lot of times people don't actually know what they want until you show it to them. And obviously what you propose to them is becomes the artifact which they then kind of converge and becomes the focal point of the discussion as well. So again, a lot of the research and a lot of the kind of activity has to be targeted, because then thoughts kind of stem off what you have shown to them. I'll just leave you with a couple of inspirational kind of quotes and messages that are relevant. People ignore designs which ignore people. So like, if you want to design for people and you want to design things that work and function, you need to know how people understand and use things. And that's a critical thing, right? Understanding behaviors, understanding functionality, understanding how people operate and work and use things. So work with people, for people. And as Don Norman says, design is concerned with how things work, how they are controlled, and the nature of the interaction between people and technology. When it's done well, the results are brilliant and pleasurable products.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ahmed. Really, Ahmed's reflections there. I've been leading mostly on the why and what about co-design and the theoretical background. Some really interesting things to pick up on there about Ahmed explaining the how, the methods, as well as the why and the what. Now, a lecture or a talk about co-design methods, in the same as design and engineering methods, is a big thing in itself. But start to think about the methods you normally apply and how you would phrase them in this way that supports and brings in perspectives, insights, ideas from other people outside of your practice. I'm really aware that we are now running short with time, so I'm going to skip through a little bit. This is an ongoing project that's collaborated with Middlesex University from the start 10 years ago. SMASHfestUK, or Smash UK is its formal business title. It was set up to explore new approaches and methods for public engagement, co-design, collaborative creativity, with a focus on communities living with socioeconomic disadvantage, who are underserved by STEM and the arts, informal education, and underrepresented in STEM and the arts education and careers. Really complex, multi-layered problem. So from the start, we went with a principle of building up this co-design approach, bringing in a diverse range of disciplinary and social and cultural collaborators to start a vision, ways through these difficulties and ways to respond. Problems such, each cycle with SMASHfest has been led, and this came around through early co-design, by a big storyline that has a big global problem that can be applied locally. So it's about understanding how things are meaningful within your community, to yourselves, in your locality, and then being able to pick apart and understand the underpinning science, the underpinning engineering, the underpinning social issues that go together within that big storyline. So one of the things that we did just before the actual pandemic, COVID pandemic, hit, was exploring the idea of a new disease causing an emergent pandemic. We did this in this really big collaborative group, so it's over 500 people from different backgrounds, different age groups, different disciplines, different areas, collaborating to create what became a big immersive theatre production. Imagine it a bit as a cross, if you haven't been to an immersive theatre place. If you've been to an immersive theatre production, the audience are in the show. They're not passive, they're active participants in the show. If you add in then a bit of escape room thinking, you've got a series of problems to solve, to resolve as you go through this, and then a simulation environment. So you're looking at different things like particle accelerators being simulated, public health policy being simulated. This is what was created there, and had very successful impacts in terms of that mission based on the research we've done so far. We're in another cycle, another storyline at the moment. And some of you here today are involved with that. Our final year MDXPD and PDE team are working with a range of collaborators, again, looking at our third cycle of climate crisis storylines, in this case, wildfire, and creating, again, an immersive experience that engages people within the story, gives them active problem solving, takes them through understanding. From these are just two of the productions or programs in co-design that have come from this 10-year collaboration. Out of this co-design, we thought initially we'd have some festival stuff happening, but it evolved far beyond that because co-design takes you into interesting places you don't expect. So from this, we've had 100+ physical digital products, interactives, events, shows, even VR games, experiences, systems, new models for co-design and participation. And this has led to changes. The work we've done in terms of activism has led to changes in funding policy from the UKRI, the British government, in terms of supporting disadvantaged communities and focusing on funding money going to places. 100,000 people plus, we've lost count, have participated through these programs. Loads of things you can go and read about for further reading, specifically about something like Space Plague or the model behind, or a recent book published that we've done a chapter in that talks about communicating science and technology through performing arts, various different things that bring the different aspects of co-design and pathways through co-design and the impacts of co-design to life through the specific sectoral area of SMASHfest. We've also had students. So Abdulaziz, back in 2021, actually approached his final major project as a co-design project. So he worked with some community groups to explore why cycling is exclusionary to some cultural groups and some social groups, and how he could work with groups to create solutions that helped to break down these exclusionary factors and engage people a different way. So a fascinating project, a difficult thing for an individual student designer with limited resources and limited time to take part. You can see from what Ahmed and I have been describing and the videos have been describing, a lot of people, a lot of organizational and resource requirement to do these programs. So that kind of leads on. There's a reflection about co-design here. Kellyanne McKercher is somebody who I would recommend you following, reading. She's a brilliant theorist and practitioner in Australia, actually, who questions always, are you really doing co-design? If you are, there should be mutual learning. So everybody's learning from one another. It's not a one-way street. Are you actually making things, not just talking about things, creating things? Is there co-deciding? She says some, I would say a lot. Are we doing decision-making with intent in a collaborative way? And really importantly, have we recognized the expertise? Everyone has valuable expertise and everyone has valuable lived experience. Is this recognized in the decision-making we're taking and the things we're creating? That all leads, I wanted to pull some takeaways in for you to be able to think about. So as I say, you've not got access, your final year students, your second year students, you've not got access to huge resources, funding pots, time to go out and build up relationships with community groups or with different organizations. So a reflection upon what might be helpful you think about. So there's your theoretical grounding, starting to think about design and engineering. Ezio Manzini, again, excellent theorist, great book, Design When Everybody Designs, contends that all design, and I add in here engineering because we're coming back to the decision making with intent, is co-design. We're always involved, but it's how explicitly we try to bring everybody together rather than separate people into creators and users. As you're going through the process, the how you do things and how you organize things, just as you start to process your practice, keep considering things like always asking the 6 questions: who, how, what, why, where, when, who's involved, who do you need, what expertise you need, how do you manage that? Of course, as a final major project or a final year student doing an individual project, that's outside your remit to an extent, but I'll move on to how you can kind of think of it as a student. Your aims, the design in generation, but the production itself and the delivery of many sectors of activity should be collaborative if you can make it so. This is important for you generally. Embrace uncertainty and risk. If you're going through even a true individual process, forget about co-design, and you're open-mindedly exploring, testing, prototyping, validating, unexpected things are gonna happen, and you've got to embrace those rather than going to safety and trying to manipulate your process. If you're doing these true co-design projects, you've got to try and enhance agency and ownership. You've got to work in the community, with the community, and the outcomes by the community, whoever the community are. You've got to think about representation so that people feel valued, whoever they are. You've got to recognize and celebrate contribution. You could do this for yourselves as well. When you've done something good, when you've hit the deadline, give yourself a pat on the back, give yourself a recognition, and be generous to yourself and everybody else you're working with. That translates as a student, perhaps, or as an early stage professional, or just carrying through into your professional career, into some things you can do, even if you don't have the resources. So the mindset, you can have the mindset of thinking beyond just a limited technical challenge, thinking about who is this really for? Why am I creating this? How will it help the people that it's really for? What are the impacts? What are the consequences of what I'm trying to decide here? And what might be the unintended consequences? Something for designers and engineers, always read some fiction, not another technical report, not another non-fiction book about how to do this, not another process book, but read some fiction. Read authors who are outside of your experience, outside of your own culture. Go and visit worlds. It's a really great way to get outside your own head. Somebody's created a world, you can get into that world and carry it with you on the tube, and you can start to change your perspective and expand your experience in a very effective, cost-effective and compressed way. Make sure you use data. Understand the variety of lifestyles, measurements, attitudes, trends, challenges out there, so you can get a good insight without having loads and loads of people to actually talk to. Make sure that you enter that in that mindset, as I said earlier on, that you are testing things. And that's before you've come up with your brief. While you're coming through your brief, while you're concepting, while you're doing initial prototypes, while you're doing pre-production, while you're doing post-production, test. And if you have limited access to real people in that, you can simulate real people to the best of your ability using the data and tools and approaches you're going to have, whether it be personas, storyboards, scenarios, body storming, acting it out. You've all got colleagues around you. You've all got your course mates. Get them involved. And then thinking about real people, the world, understand minimums, maximums, the physical reality of the real world and the abilities that people have. Think about what are often called extreme users, and then get outside your head. Again, look, I've said that twice. You are not typical. If you design for yourself thinking you're a typical human being, you'll be wrong, because nobody is typical. And nobody is a rational economic unit as often as we're defined in economics. We're emotional, irrational creatures. So therefore you have to think about that in your considerations of how people work, what people want, what people need. Reinforcing that, keep asking, who is your design and engineering for, or with, or by? What are you trying to achieve and why? B, we've got all of these challenges, but there are also opportunities to make a positive impact on the world at the moment. Try and be the hero in your own story. What's this story you're doing? And be the hero in our story, our collective story. Rushing through. I know we're over time now. Oh God, we're miles over time. Sorry. Challenge to you all then. Constantly ask this, before you take on or blindly wander into to create an interesting technical challenge, not thinking about the implications, stop and consider the wider implications of the work, the future of the planet, for the future of real people, and take control, take responsibility for those actions, for the things you're choosing to work on. You aren't powerless. Your choices do matter. And then there's lots of extra reading. Thank you very much. Apologies for overrunning.
Amazing.
We'll talk about any of this. These are things that I'll include within there for you to have a further read of that are really useful, if that's helpful.
No, that's amazing. Thank you, Wyn. A fascinating introduction, obviously, to co-design, a snapshot of your work and selected case studies and other projects and work as well. As usual, guys, if you want to, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, and your comments in the chat throughout the talk. A few have come through. We'll have a Q&A now, and there's an option to go live and interact with Wyn as well if you want to, so just put a request through in the chat. So the first question coming through from Jordan is, in response to seeing your list of career fields you've participated in and engaged in, after university, which career did you first start out in? And why did you choose that specific field? And how did it help you grow and expand your expertise?
That's an interesting question in that I didn't choose. I grew up, I went out into the world of work. I'm from a mining community, from a mining family originally. And I grew up in a mining community, and I came to the age of going out to work around about the point of the miners' strike in 1984, 1985. Some of you might know a bit of history around that. The mining communities, mining families, miners were out on strike for over a year. So you can imagine if your community is a mining community, that's devastating for everybody. You don't get paid for a year. There's no work for a year. We had soup kitchens. Everybody was helping out, buttering bread for people, trying to make food, raise money. If any of you've seen the film Pride, that was my community, and there were people in that film that represented the fictional versions of them that I knew, and my mum and dad worked with and helped with. So, I didn't really have any idea what a career was, to be honest. I didn't have any idea what a permanent job was. So a lot of those things I did just to get by. I couldn't get any jobs. I didn't really understand. I didn't know anything about product design or product design engineering. I thought engineering, we had big engineering areas. So just down the valley, there were big steelworks and petrochemical works, and there were options to go into, except there weren't many at that point, but there were options to go into apprenticeships for control engineering. They're working in the big industrial control things. That's what as far as I knew, engineering was, or being a mechanic on a car. Design, I had no idea. I didn't know what it was. As far as perhaps it was making furniture or something to do with cushions in my head at that point. So a lot of those jobs I did just to get by, to make money, cash in hand. A lot of them were. So they were like my informal artisan thing. They were informal jobs, which is a nice posh word for illegal, really, I suppose. And then some of the jobs I ended up doing, I was claiming dole, claiming unemployment benefit at the time, and the rather punitive Thatcher government decided if anybody had been on unemployment benefit for more than a year, they needed to go back for retraining. So some of the jobs I was made to go, or I would lose my benefits and any future entitlement to education. So I ended up in a job for a number of months. Well, I ended up in a job for a year at that point, where I had to work there for a year, and for 3 or 4 months, we were manually digging riverbanks and reinforcing riverbanks. So it was up to your knees, or sometimes your waist, in cold rivers with a big pick, digging away to get through there. And at the time, sorry, that was a bit long-winded about all sorts of things. What did I learn from that? At the time, I thought a bit of despair, a bit of confusion. But I think those were probably my most important learning experiences, in realizing what the world is like by our political choices, by our design choices, by our engineering choices, what we create for people, and how people have to get by, and the different perspectives that people are forced into, and the exclusions that people have put upon them. And that has informed the probably quiet social fury in all of my work ever since. And then when I did start to find out what design was, and I managed to, after a good few years working, I managed to get a place on a course going away to do 3-dimensional design. And I started to understand what it was about and what it could do. And then later on, I followed up moving more into engineering, and again, what it was about and what it could do. But underpinning that was whether it's the fury, or whether it's concern about how these things impacted, and how our society and the experiences I've had working and not having a career and just scrabbling to get by, while being then lucky enough to have choices open up to me and end up not doing those things, whereas many of the people that I'd been doing those things with continued to have no choices in life. So it informed me to keep remembering how lucky I am to have what we call a career, and to have choices in life, and to continue to explore ways within my career that we can support changes in society that open up those choices and a fairer society to as many people as possible.
Amazing. That's super inspiring. A couple of questions coming in from Harry Miller Adams. The first being, what was your most favorite project that you've worked on so far?
Oh man,
if you had to pick one.
Could I do that? Cheesy. It's almost like you see these interviews. It's like the project I'm working on at the moment is always my favorite project. And there's a certain truth to that. There's a certain level of avoidance of the question as well. But it is, if you work in design and engineering and innovation, the idea of new things is always rather exciting. So the newest thing, the current thing you're working on, is the thing that gets you fired up. So there's always a bit of that. But there are various other ones. There are particularly resonant ones for me. So where I first started doing proper co-design, and where I first started creating immersive experiences, didn't know they were called that. They weren't called that then, because this is nearly 30 years ago, was on a project called Art Alert, which a friend of mine founded, and I was original collaborator on it. We designed and created these immersive, co-designed environmental art projects. And we'd get big marquees and we'd cover them in cardboard, and we'd get live animal activities in amongst them, because it was about animals and ocean sustainability and environmental activism. And then we'd create these backdrops and sometimes sculptures made from all thrown away stuff. And people would come and participate, and they'd help us create, they'd add to these big murals and add to the sculptures and things as we went. And one of them, we ended up running I was still living in South Wales at that time, but we ended up running the exhibition in Covent Garden Square for World Animal Day. And we were working with the artist David Shepherd, who is renowned for painting elephants. So as a centerpiece of this, I designed and built a full-scale elephant from old tea bag materials and carpet roll materials and chicken wire. And then once that had been built, we then set it up in Covent Garden Square, and the public came and painted it and responded to it around. So that's always been a big favorite, because there's not many times in your life when you get the opportunity to design and build an elephant from tea bag material, should I say, and cardboard tubes. But it also, it was foundational in terms of lots of the things I do these days in terms of co-design and immersive experiences, even before I realized that I was doing that.
Amazing, amazing. Another question coming in from Harry Miller Adams. What was the biggest design challenge that you faced to date?
Again, that's a depends answer, whether it's a lot of the things we're doing at the moment have, so I listed out there all the collaborators in the Space BEng project. Now the wildfire project doesn't have quite as many collaborators as that, but there's lots of different people involved, lots of different people you're trying to bring together. So the challenges at the moment, there are obviously the technical design and engineering challenges to actually bring all these ideas and inputs and insights together. So there's the synthesizing of everybody's work, and then the inevitable technical challenges you get in making these ideas work. So those are hard at the moment, because we're looking at these immersive experiences that are mixed reality, sometimes virtual reality, physical and digital. So there's technical challenges there, but then there's the kind of logistical challenge of organizing and continuing to run these co-design programs, because there are so many people involved in so many different places with so many different schedules, and so those challenges keep me awake at night, and have done for 10 years or so. Other challenges, some of the biggest challenges sometimes are relatively small. In a previous life, I was project engineer for the company Powerbreaker. You might have seen Powerbreaker, because they do RCD surge cutoff units and various power control stuff. And I was working with LG in Korea. So, and we had a new unit we've been designing and engineering. We prototyped it, built it, etc. And I was out there working with the production engineers, because we were doing the first production runs. And we just had this tiny little indent that held part of the mechanism in place, that when we went to manufacture for the test runs, just didn't work. It had worked in all of the prototypes. It seemed to work in principle from all of our modeling of it. It should have worked. And then in production, it didn't work. So there was this tiny little thing. And we spent a week tweaking it, changing slight dimensions, checking through, what was happening, and we just couldn't get it to work. And it was just utterly perplexing. And it turned out in the end, by the end of the week, we found out that in one of the polymer mixes we had, what we thought the mix was in terms of the balance between ABS and polycarbonate, it had gone wrong for some reason in the specification. So we had a different mix, and it was softer than it should have been. Therefore, it was more rubbery due to the excess of ABS, and therefore it was shearing off and wouldn't latch. So it turned out, it was this thing that was tiny and seemed like it shouldn't be a problem. And for a week, there was a load of us sitting in a factory in South Korea, scratching our heads and trying things and trying a new run, and this big production line was there, and I was like, oh no, this is all going to fail. We've got it wrong, but we can't understand how. That one came through. So that one comes to mind, because that was a tiny thing. that had potentially a huge impact and was really quite traumatic to try and resolve. And then it turned out to be something very, very simple, but something we had missed or hadn't realized had happened.
Amazing. And the final question there in the chat today from Ramsey. Ramsey's asking, is there anything in your 25+ year career that you wish you did differently or more of?
Yeah, pretty much everything. You know, it's kind of an endless. I think when you stop and reflect, but from my perspective, if you stop and reflect and everything seems fine and you're perfectly happy with everything you've done, I wonder if you're reflecting correctly, or whether you've just been a very, very lucky person, or whether you're not very good at reflecting. You know, day by day, I'll be going home on the tube, heading home, or I'll head home this evening now, and I'll be thinking about, oh, I wish I'd spent more time on this and less time on that in the talk. I wish I'd got this. Oh, I've remembered this really important thing I wanted to say and I forgot, and I spent ages talking about the thing that perhaps wasn't so important, and I wish I'd stuck to time. So I don't know whether it's a kind of design engineering mindset that constantly questions, reviews, reflects, and deconstructs. But yeah, everything, all the time.
It's a great answer. And guys, Wyn, first and foremost, thanks for taking out your time and joining us tonight. It was a brilliant talk and a great Q&A session as well. From all of us at Middlesex University, Product Design, Design Engineering, we obviously thank you for both the time and the talk. And for all of the students and participants and alumni, Wyn's details were sent to your emails ahead of the talk as well, including links to the LinkedIn social media handles and additional reading. So obviously feel free to browse and connect. And to conclude, thanks for your patience. Thanks for the great engagement and participation. For all the participants who've joined us tonight, students, staff, alumni, keep an eye out on your emails for the details of the next speaker and the links to the next talk. Until next week, next Thursday, stay well, stay safe, and thank you guys.
Thank you, folks. Sorry for overrunning.